everybody. Welcome to Vassals of Kingsgrave's Great Linear Song of Ice and Fire reread. This episode could potentially spoil any events in George R. R. Martin's published series, including TWOW preview chapters. It will not, however, contain any show spoilers. And as always, the opinions discussed here are that of the individual vassal and not of VOK as a whole. Right, so I am QueenJames, and today I am joined by Thomas.
Hi, FTWard on the podcast of Ice and Fire forums.
And Nadia.
Hi everyone, this is Nadia.
Michael.
Hey, Khal Wadege on the forums.
Jock may be here, may not be here. He is MunroJock2 on the forums. Joining her for her first podcast episode is Abby.
Hi, Darceymormont on the forums.
All right, and hopefully at some point Zander will be joining us. And in the last episode, we ended with Brienne Feast on April 9th. In this episode, we will cover Cersei 6 from Feast, Jon 6, and Tyrion 6 from Dance. These chapters take place between April 10th and April 15th, 300. And because it's her first podcast, we have a few questions for Abby. First question is, how did you get into A Song of Ice and Fire?
Okay, I'm about to lose any and all credibility I may possess because I didn't read the books until after season 7 of the show aired, which was like a year ago, which I know like is a big no-no or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I was just like, I have to wait a long time and I should read the books now because I just started university and that's definitely a good thing to do is to read all the books in the middle of university. So that's what I did.
Nice. A nice distraction, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even know there were 7 seasons of the show. That was a surprise to me. So.
Yeah, it's the next one is the last one. It's still all right. It's getting a little.
Season 7 I did not like. I thought it was it's just like underwhelming.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of that, a lot of reaction YouTube videos, and they're not as excited.
Yeah. To avoid show spoilers, it's like they really jump the shark with some of the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
To avoid spoilers. And how did you get into VOK?
So when I finished reading all the books, I was like, I want to listen to some podcasts because I love podcasts. And then I found this podcast of Ice and Fire. And so I listened to like all of the reread episodes of that. And I think they mentioned VOK. And I was like, I don't have anything better to do. So then I went here because I needed more reread podcasts, I guess.
Very nice. Good.
So VOK, I didn't have anything better to do. I think that's a ringing endorsement.
I don't know.
That seems to be a trend. All right. And for the moment to find out how to judge you, who is your favorite character?
Okay, literally, I get judged so hard, so I'm waiting. I'm prepared. Theon is my favorite character. I literally had my friend, she's like, wow, you're a monster. You like Theon? And I'm like, his plot is just so interesting. And like, his chapters are really well written and stuff. But yeah, I like the Greyjoys a lot.
No, Theon's
especially.
fine. That's not a controversial one.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, was Theon your favorite character in the show, or is that just on reading the books?
I liked Bran a lot in the show. And then he got annoying. And then I liked Arya and she got annoying. And now I don't really like anyone in the show. Because they're all just kind of annoying. Like, they just piss me off. I don't know. So, I guess, yeah, I liked Alfie Allen's acting as Theon in the show, too. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't really like the show that much anymore. Yeah. So.
Well, I do have to say, Theon as a character, not a huge fan, but I do like his chapters. They're really well written. Especially the last one that they reviewed, I think in the last episode, it was almost like a horror novel. It was.
Yeah, that one's really gross.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. And to kick us off with our chapter summaries, we have Abby with Cersei 6.
All right. This actually, I realize, is pretty long, so sorry. Okay, so on April 10th, which also happens to be my birthday, so I guess it's fate that I'm doing this recap. On their way to the Sept of Baelor, Cersei and Tiana Merryweather share some hot tea about Marjorie. Apparently, she has a lot of admirers and enjoys singers, the Blue Bard in particular. Also, Marjorie is a virgin, maybe nobody knows, but she's probably been sleeping with Loras because what else do you do when you have a hot brother? We also learn a bit about the High Septon, who basically serves as the Seven's equivalent of a pope. Like, they give up their name, which can get confusing because they don't get renamed, unlike the pope. Cersei doesn't like the new High Septon because he's poor and smelly and she didn't get to pick him and she likes to be in control of everything. Also, Tiana would bring her son to court, and it's really not suspicious at all that Cersei's new best friend has no interest in making their sons best friends as well. The reason for the visit to this poor, smelly High Septon is revealed. He won't bless Tommen, and Cersei needs this blessing to make his claim look more legitimate. Cersei has to continue the rest of the trek on foot because there's too many smelly sparrows blocking her path. When she finally reaches the steps, she sees that a pile of skulls has been erected around a statue of Baelor the Beloved. She talks to some of the sparrows and tries to appeal to them, but nobody cares about anything she says. All they want to do is be able to protect themselves so that they don't end up like all those skulls, which happen to belong to dead followers of the Seven who were killed, foreshadowing, probably. As Cersei tries to enter the sept, she realizes that the 2 septons that she has in her pocket are not there. Once inside, she finds one of them scrubbing the floor and learns that the other is being forced to fast because he is too fat, and don't you know there are children starving in Fleet Bottom. When Cersei finally meets the new High Septon, she immediately doesn't like him. He doesn't wear shoes, and he wants her to show him common decency. How dare he do that? Also, he sold his crown to help the poor, which is something crazy, I guess. They talk about why he won't bless Tommen, which basically comes down to the fact that the war is still going on, and members of the Faith are being killed by all the fighting kings, including the Lannisters. Cersei agrees to arm the Faith in exchange for the High Septon's blessing, blessing Tommen and relieving the crown's debt of almost 1 million gold dragons. Cersei leaves feeling very smart, smarter than her own father even, for she has given a military to the group of people who have clearly shown their disdain for both her and the crown. On her way back to the Red Keep, she encounters Margaery, who we find out has been being a good queen by showing compassion towards her people, something Cersei finds utterly repugnant. Margaery even wants to make the people like Tommen, their king. How dare Margaery do that? They chat, and Cersei thinks about how Margaery and Loras are probably banging. End of chapter.
Excellent.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. So, just to start off, you shared on the doc the Cersei rearming the Faith is the worst decision on Planetos in the last 30 years. And after thinking about it, I completely agree. Anyone else agrees with that?
Yeah, for sure.
I think it came second. Rhaegar and Lyanna running off might have been the first. I remember I voted for the rearming of the Faith for my number 1.
I think it tied, actually. So what we did a couple years ago on the podcast of Ice and Fire Forums, we ran like a 32 decision tournament of all the bad decisions. Well, not all of them, but the 32 top bad decisions. And it came down to, as Michael said, Rhaegar and Lyanna and Cersei rearming the Faith. And I believe it was a tie, and I went back and looked at the thread, and I couldn't figure out if we ever decided who was the actual worst decision or if we just left it as a tie. But I think Cersei did have 2 of the final 4 were Cersei decisions. And,
not surprising.
Yeah.
But it's such a lazy decision on her part. Like when she goes to deal with the High Septon, it's astonishing how little history she knows. Like she doesn't understand why Maegor did what he did. As terrible a ruler as he was, he did have a reason for disarming the Faith, right? And she doesn't understand the reasons for that. She doesn't care about the consequences. She just cares about winning that particular battle. That's it. She's not thinking long term at all.
I thought it was really funny with that quote where the High Septon is talking about Maegor and what Jaehaerys did, because in a previous Feast chapter, Cersei was making fun of Jaime for not knowing his history. This was when Tommen and Margaery are getting married, and she's talking about Sir Ossifer Plum and his 6-foot dick. But then when it comes to actual ruling policy and the High Septon is lecturing her, she's like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. So yeah, very indicative of Cersei, what she remembers in history.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think of Maegor as being like one of the big bads in history, and the fact it took him to dearm the Faith, and then she just so flippantly just rearmed them. I think it's, we don't have someone like Maegor in this world right now. I guess Cersei could be a female Maegor, but she doesn't have the dragon to back her up, so...
Is that what Tyrion calls her? Doesn't he call her like Maegor with tits or something like that at one point?
Yeah. Maegor with tits, yeah.
I mean, I see her like reasoning though. Like, I mean, if you like think about it from her perspective, it makes sense to her. Like, they need more. Like, they need more military, I guess. Like, their crown is somehow $1 million in debt. Like, I don't know how that happens. Like, obviously, it's like not a good idea to arm these like fanatics. But like from like her thoughts, like it makes like she her decision makes sense. Like towards like what she thinks, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Because she has no historical record or memory. So yes, it makes sense when you don't know anything.
Yeah,
I really think she's being very clever, and she does get the debt forgiven, but she doesn't really think about the fact that she doesn't know anything about this particular High Sept, and he's an unknown quantity basically in this equation, and she doesn't consider that at all. She doesn't know his motivations. She doesn't know what he wants, but she just makes a deal with him. That's it, you know.
Well, she got totally played by him, and she thinks that she came up with this idea, but like he totally like played her basically. Like, you can tell from the beginning, like the Faith wants to be a military and whatever, and she's like, oh, like I came up with this great idea, and like I'm so smart, but like obviously like this is what they want. They want to take down the crown probably and whatever.
Right. And I mean, without an army, how could the Faith demand their gold back? You know, it's not like they have a force that they can go up against the crown. So you forgave a debt that you know, there was not a force forcing you to pay back, and now you just arm them. I think it was just a terrible decision on her end. And once again, it's just like Cersei, she just puts a Band-Aid over a massive wound.
Over a broken leg.
Yeah, exactly. She, I mean, we know that Cersei is just a terrible decision maker, and she's completely self-centered in her decision making.
Do you think that's consistent throughout the books, though? Because I feel like that kind of sneaks up on us. I feel like until we actually get into her head, she seems at least capable, if not kind of clever, like in the first couple books.
I think a lot of it has to do with Joffrey's death. You know, she was like, you know, I don't think she has the same respect for Tommen that she did for Joffrey. And so, you know, before she was making a lot of decisions based off of, you know, keeping Joffrey on the throne. But now it's like, you know, she doesn't really see Tommen or give him any credit, and so she wants to rule over him, which I just think, you know, once again, she's not doing a very good job.
Yeah, I mean, she's driving him away, really, everything she does.
And the fact that Tommen named all of his boats after, you know,
Tyrells.
Yeah, he named 5 boats after the Tyrells, and finally Cersei was like, no, at least one of them has to be a Lannister, so he names it after his sister. But that's just telling of how, you know, wrapped around Marjorie's finger Tommen is.
Yeah, and the fact that he gets to name one after Renly Baratheon, who was a traitor to the crown. You know.
Yeah, but he's also the hero of the Blackwater.
Yeah, he's sanctified by that stupid song they made up in the Purple Wedding. But yeah, with Cersei, I get the sense that something broke in her when Joffrey died. And you see in A Feast for Crows, like her alcoholism. She's always been a heavy drinker, but now it's getting out of control. And she's also gaining weight. And she keeps thinking that her handmaidens just don't know how to wash her clothes. And so there's this, like, it's mental illness. That's denial of reality. Yeah, it's just creeping in, and her brain is rotting. I don't know how to say it, but yeah, I think this is genuine mental illness that's affecting her ruling policies, all aspects of her life.
Well, she's always been like unhinged, but she's never been like able to like act upon what's like her whatever she has going on in her head. But now that she has like all this power, it's like allowed to come out. It's kind of like I was listening to this podcast earlier about like some dictator or whatever, and it's like they're talking like there's a lot of people that you probably meet on the street that like if given the chance they would have the capability of like murdering 1 million people or whatever, but they just don't have the chance, you know. And she's finally been given that chance, so like her like full craziness is able to just come forward.
Yeah, she was completely unhinged.
I was going to say before she was a functioning crazy person, but now she's a non-functioning crazy person.
Yeah. And I wanted to jump into some of Bina's notes here. In the opening sequence, Bina parallels between Marjorie and Anne Boleyn. She was accused of
Oh my god, I was just gonna say that.
Yeah, she was accused of having young, attractive singers around her and then sleeping with them. And then Anne Boleyn was also accused of incest with her brother. And those are all things that Cersei is trying to pin on Marjorie. Do you think that's conscious of George to put that in there, the parallels between the two? I know he draws a lot off of history.
Because as soon as I read it, it just jumped out at me that this was exactly the same thing that happened to Anne Boleyn. Basically, Henry VIII wanted her out of the way so he could marry his next lover. And he basically found any accusation that he could to throw against her and try to get her out of the way, which is exactly Cersei's whole plan, is to get Marjorie out of the way so she can have complete control over Tommen. And the way she goes about it is pretty much the same, right? She finds the same kind of people, and specifically Loras Tyrell, she keeps asking about how often he visits Marjorie, and that's, she's definitely planning on pinning the incest accusation against her, which is very, very hypocritical of her.
Such absurd projection. Why would you assume that? And Cersei knows that he's gay. It's just so bizarre.
Right. That's one of the things that I was going to bring up is it just the aristos who kind of are privy to the fact that Loras is gay, or does almost everybody know? Because I thought it was kind of just a well-known thing that nobody talks about.
Has Cersei ever referenced that she knows?
Yes, she has. When I think it was the previous chapter where she was saying, "Oh, I know about the bonds that grow between a squire and their lord," and thinking about Renly and Loras. So yeah, she definitely knows, and I think she even has a line in this book, or this chapter, about a man might prefer wine to hippocress, but he'll drink it either just the same. I don't know. It's something really stupid, and she doesn't understand human sexuality. But yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't think the common, if you're asking the people who care about if the claim is legitimate and if the common people would do anything, I don't think they honestly really care about was Loras gay or whatever. That's not really their concern. So she could probably say it could be a well kept, the worst kept secret or whatever, and people probably wouldn't really care if that's what she's going to try to pin it on. Say oh, they're sleeping together.
Yeah.
In a certain
some of the
non-canonical adaptation. Oh, sorry, you go, James.
No, I was just going to say, it's a lot of the small folks seem to just eat up whatever gossip is there. I mean, they believe the story. So, I guess maybe convincing the small folk wouldn't be a hard thing, but I think convincing the other aristos that Loras is sleeping with his sister is a little difficult. I think they're more privy to the fact that Loras is gay, and he probably would not get on his sister.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in a certain non-canonical adaptation of Song of Ice and Fire, which we are not going to talk about, you see something very different to what's in the books, and that everyone is talking about how Loras is gay all the time. And I just want to say, I think that's very not the case in the books. I think that this is a limited secret that only very people like Littlefinger or Varys with spies and agents and stuff. This is a high echelon secret. That's just my opinion.
I was just going to say, the first time I read the books, I just completely missed the fact that Renly and Loras were in love with each other. Even though it's, when you go back and read, it's very, very obvious, and especially when you see the show. But it's, if you're just reading really fast and trying to get to the end of the book, it's something you can very easily miss. So there aren't very, in your face indications of
right.
people knowing.
I think being someone, I watched the first 3 seasons of the show before I got to the books. So kind of being exposed to the way that the show painted Renly and Loras' relationship, it was much easier to catch on in the books. But I can understand if you have no frame of reference for their relationship, that could go, unnoticed.
Going back to... sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going back to like if the other like Aristos know, like the Tyrells are like the Lord Paramounts of the Reach, I think, right? And so I think it's the Reach, but so it's like even if like other like lesser lords knew, it would probably like they wouldn't talk about it because it's like those are their Lord Paramounts, like they could get like in a lot of trouble, you know. So I don't know. If it might be like some people think about it, but like it would probably be something not really talked about unless like among like the very like high up lords, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean they're also the second richest
yeah,
house in the country, so they can, they have enough money to throw around to bribe people.
and it's not like Renly and Loras were like sleeping around. Like Renly was sleeping with a lot of other, men. Or take the case of Lynn Corbray, for example. He's like he's
We
Peter
know it's
Baelish.
whispered with Lynn Corbray. Like Catelyn says, it was notorious.
Yeah, but
whispered.
then that's because he likes to have, little boys delivered to him. And that happens very frequently. So that's why, people have more opportunities to find out. But with Renly and Loras, it seems like they were only with each other. I mean, there are no other past relationships mentioned, right? So it's
Right.
something that can be kept secret,
I
think Stannis implies that Renly.
Well, Stannis is Renly's brother.
I'm just saying that I don't know that Loras is the first for Renly. Not that I care about or anything, but I think Stannis implies.
First, but just that there aren't that many that everyone would know.
Right, yeah. And the way it seemed from the book is like once they found each other, they kind of like fell in love, and I don't think that they would have any
monogamous
other partners. Yeah, I mean, Loras has that line about something about like a Renly being his candle or something.
When the sun has set, no candle may replace it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think Loras is definitely in love with Renly. I'm less certain that Renly is like love of a lifetime in love with Loras, but that's just me.
Well, we don't really get to see that much of Renly, do we?
Yeah, he's pretty. In the first book, he's pretty central character, I think.
But what you're saying, Thomas, is that Renly never has a line akin to that.
Sure, but there's never the occasion really either. But I mean, there's no occasion for him to say something like that to someone. But that's just my impression is that Renly's kind of a party guy. Yeah, and that Loras is deeply in love with Renly.
Yeah, he just wanted to throw lavish parties and rule that way, not, be necessarily a good governor, but just like a good party thrower. He was like Robert II.
Well, yeah, and if you compare it to that, it could be kind of like how Robert thought of Lyanna. It's like he wasn't really in love with Lyanna, but he was like in love with the idea of her, and it probably was kind of similar with that with Renly and Loras, where like obviously with Lyanna, like the feelings were not reciprocated, but like Renly's probably like maybe as close to his love as he thinks he could get, like it would be close to his love as like he could manage, I guess.
Yeah. And then I wanted to jump to a different topic, going back to Cersei's craziness. Bina has a note here that the way Cersei just casually describes Melora falling into the well, kind of just so flippantly, does that mean that she is like genuinely have cognitive dissonance?
Well, is it proven that she pushed her in the well? Like I think she did, but like does she ever like outright say I pushed my friend into a well?
When she does her walk, she imagines Melara looking at her with accusing eyes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Take that as you will. I mean, again, not confirmed, but.
Right, and I know, I mean, at least if she didn't push her in the well, she knew that she was in the well and she just left her. So either way, I mean, you're guilty, and the fact that she's just so, laissez-faire about mentioning it and just, oh yeah, the girl in the well, and she just kept going. I mean, she really doesn't have a sense of empathy for anyone, I don't think.
Something we'll see in future chapters is that Cersei doesn't like to think about unpleasant ways, particularly gruesome, unpleasant ways that she's treated people. And this is like when Felice ends up with Qyburn, and she never says, I feel bad for what I've done, but she just doesn't want to think about it. So I would actually say maybe this is a bit of guilt, and that this is Cersei's way of dealing with it, is misremembering it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Avoiding, thinking about it in a way that makes her feel bad.
Yeah, well, she also gets like really during this chapter, she gets like very pissed off anytime the High Septon like mentions that the Lannisters are committing any like crimes, you know, in the salt pans and whatever. So I think she just doesn't like thinking anything bad about her family at all. Like, because I think he's like, oh, what does he say? He says something about
wolves and lions.
Yeah. And she's like, how dare you? Like,
yeah, and even in her head, she's like, I'm going to forget that he said lion.
Like, my family is in a war, but they're not doing anything.
In a ruler is to not listen to anything bad. You just want to have yes men all the time. That's what Cersei wants.
That's Cersei, yeah.
Well, that's what she does. Doesn't she fill her council up with just yes men, right? And that.
Oh.
Yeah. You could draw a parallel to what's happening today in today's society, but we won't get there. We won't go too political.
Where's Kevin Lannister when you need him?
And then also, Bina mentions here, and I just thought, I mean, it was just a quick line, but yeah, why would the story of Baelor being, you know, mean and locking his sisters up prompt Cersei to run and pinch Tyrion as a baby until he cried? Like, what's the deal with that? She's just always
because Cersei's crazy.
Did she like get off on it? I don't know.
Right.
I think Tyrion represents the patriarchy in a sense. I don't like obviously distilling all your anger to a baby because of something a man did that was sexist 100 years ago to other woman is there's not a clear chain of thinking here, but yeah, I think he hated men so much in that instance.
She's the beautiful sister, right? So, you know, maybe she's taking that anger out on Tyrion. I don't know. Cersei's crazy.
Yeah, I just took it as her asserting her power over someone she could assert power over in that moment, but I don't have a good explanation for it either.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah,
and she finds when she thinks of the ship that's named after Tywin, and she thinks of how it's going to be referred as a she, and she takes like, she's very amused by that.
I thought that was surprising given the fact that she's so Team Tywin, it seemed. You know, she kind of like idolizes her father, and then for him to kind of laugh over, or, you know, her to laugh over the fact that they're going to be calling him a she seems kind of...
But then she's always been resentful of how Tywin would let her train with swords and how he seems to think that, you know, she's not as important as his son and heir Jaime. So she has
this very love-hate relationship where, like, and she even thinks of this in the chapter, you know, Father, if you could see me now, you wouldn't have sent me back to Casterly Rock, or you wouldn't have been planning to send me back to Casterly Rock. But it's like, well, he can't see you because he would have sent you back to Casterly Rock. And so there's these two ideas of Tywin in her head that she can't really reconcile.
Well, and it seemed to me like with Cersei, she couldn't, you know, have all these terrible thoughts of her family in her head, but the moment someone else outside the Lannister family says anything bad, that's when she gets pissed. And so I just thought it was strange that, you know, having the common folk or you know, people on the ship refer to Tywin as a she thought was amusing because it seemed like she's the only one who can, you know, talk bad about her family.
Maybe because she chose to name the ship Lord Tywin. I don't know.
Right? Yeah.
There's not a lot of sense in Cersei's motives.
Right.
I think she's all about like proving herself to her father, but also being better than her father, I guess. So if like the common people refer to Tywin as a she, like with the boat or whatever, she kind of more legitimizes like she's a woman and she's in power and like see like this she what is it, emasculate is the word I'm thinking of. She like takes away his masculinity, you know, by like being like, it's not just because he's a man.
Yeah. Some form of asserting power posthumously. Does anybody else have anything to say about the Cersei chapter, or do you want to move on?
I have
do you think that there's, since Tina Merriweather is probably a Varys plant, what do you think of the various knights that he's mentioned? Pycelle seems to have a purpose, at least. What about the rest of the knights?
So the knights mentioned in the accusations?
Yeah.
Pycelle giving her anti-abortifacants or something? The moon tea, doesn't that come out later? I mean, I don't know how. Is it confirmed Taina is a Varys plant? I don't know if that's true or not, but
No, or it's some Cersei herself thinks, is she a spy? What's her deal?
she's certainly a spy, right?
I don't think she's a spy.
Oh, really?
I think this very strongly. I think the reason that she's in this story is to serve other functions. She gives us more information about Cersei and her ruling policies, as well as Cersei's character. And I think that's her function, not to be a spy reveal.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't think she's necessarily a spy. I think she's someone who just wants to climb the social ladder as high as she can get. And latching onto Cersei, the Queen Regent, probably is the fastest way to get any kind of clout or power. So I think that's what she was going for. And I think she also knows that her husband is not going to do it for them, so she has to do it for her and her child.
Yeah, she also knows that Cersei is a little unhinged, so she has the backup plan, basically, because she books it once Cersei gets imprisoned, right? And she won't bring her family to court and everything. So
yeah, she was really resistant about bringing her son around. Especially since she doesn't have another heir. Yeah, she definitely knows. Yeah, she knows that something's going down. And Michael, did you have something to say?
Oh, yes. Symbolic conversations. There are two in this chapter. So the first is when Cersei comes across Baelor covered in skulls and bones, and she tries to win the crowd over to her side, saying, we'll give you vengeance, I'll kill all these people. And then someone comes forward and says, well, we're not after vengeance, we just want protection. I think that's very symbolic of how she never ever gets the faith or the Sparrows movement within the faith of the Septon. It's just she cannot comprehend what they want. And then a second one right at the end is when she's talking with Marjorie. And I think this represents the relationship between the Lannisters and the Tyrells very well. Marjorie is trying to say, you should let me help you. There must be some things I could do for you, it'll stop all this talk. And then Cersei is just trying to insult Marjorie in very unsubtle ways. I think that says a lot about these two families. And one side's trying to make it work. The other side, mainly through Cersei, is just trying to bring that down.
Well, is Marjorie really trying to make it work? Or is she just trying to kind of make herself look better to bring down Cersei so that she can take her place?
I feel like it makes the story more interesting if she is trying to genuinely work with Cersei. And this actually relates to Cersei's scheme to take her down, which we'll see later. But if we find out that Marjorie was trying to take Cersei down in this manner, it adds justification to Cersei's actions. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Cersei's actions ever come across as justified. They come across as crazy and paranoid. So it makes it a bit more tragic if Marjorie genuinely wanted a good relationship. But that's just my idea.
No, I like that. It's an interesting way of looking at it, and that would make it for an interesting viewpoint towards Cersei's overall character. She's just not sympathetic at all, basically, what it would come down to.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think that Marjorie doesn't have against Cersei. I think she definitely wants to work with Cersei. And I think, maybe in the back of her mind, going out and dealing with the small folk and doing everything that she's doing, maybe winning people over. And maybe she just thinks that that'll help out the crown in general and not I think Cersei thinks that it's Marjorie's way of getting more power or getting the small folk behind her. But I think Marjorie's just trying to do it for the betterment of the crown and for Tommen.
It's standard good PR. Look at the royal family today with their weddings, which is very topical and relevant. Harry and Meghan, they just went to Australia, and Australians love them right now. We are not going to be voting for a Republic anytime soon.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's what royals have to do. You have to go out, you have to meet with the small folk, you have to win people over, because then they're going to be more likely to do what you want them to do. And I think Marjorie gets that. Cersei doesn't get it. She just has this idea of, inherent ruling. Just because my name, because I am the queen, you have to respect me. And that I just don't think she understands that that's not how people's minds work. Anything else on Cersei? No? Okay. All right, then after Cersei 6 in Feast, we jump to Jon 6 in Dance. This takes place 2 days later on April 12th, and we have Thomas with the chapter summary.
So this won't be as good as Abby's, I guess. But Jon sends out 3 parties of rangers north of the wall to find our foes and kill them if needs be. He wonders about Benjen and sending out men who might never return. Cotter Pike in Eastwatch by the Sea reports wildlings building rafts along the coast of the Shivering Sea. Sir Denys Mallister in the Shadow Tower reports wildlings by the Gorge. Jon has sent each 10 Mole's Town wildlings, but both commanders have complained, doubting their usefulness and loyalty. Jon spars with 3 of Master-at-Arms Iron Emmet's best pupils, before being challenged by a surprisingly capable Rattleshirt, who humbles Jon in single combat. Clytus brings Jon a message from Ramsay Bolton, Lord of the Hornwood, sealed with pink wax. Moat Cailin is taken, the flayed corpses of the Ironmen have been nailed to posts along the King's Road. Roose Bolton summons all lords to Barrowtown to affirm their loyalty to the Iron Throne and celebrate his son's wedding to Arya Stark. It is signed in addition by Lord Dustin, Lady Serwyn, 4 Riswells, and the Giant of House Umber. Jon and a returned ghost go for a walk in the evening and encounter Ygritte. Turns out to actually be Melisandre returning from her prayers before the night fire. Mel tempts Jon with the promise to save his sister that he does not have, and she seduces first Ghost and then Jon. She speaks of the power in the wall, in Ghost, in Jon. She says, "The Lord of Light in his wisdom has made us male and female, 2 parts of a greater whole. In our joining there is power. Power to make life, power to make light, power to cast shadows. Hear me now, Jon Snow. 9 crows flew into the White Wood to find your foes for you. 3 of them are dead. They have not died yet, but their death is out there waiting for them, and they ride to meet it. You sent them forth to be your eyes in the darkness, but they will be eyeless when they return to you. I have seen their pale dead faces in my flames, empty sockets, weeping blood." She pushed her red hair back, and her red eyes shone. "You do not believe me, but you will. The cost of that belief will be 3 lives. A small price to pay for wisdom, some might say, but not one you had to pay. Remember that when you behold the blind and ravaged faces of your dead. And come that day, take my hand." The mist rose from her pale flesh, and for a moment it seemed as if pale sorceress flames were playing about her fingers. "Take my hand," she said again, "and let me save your sister."
That was good. Thank you. All right. Well, since you did the chapter summary, you have any notes on this one or anything you want to talk about first?
So it's my position that Melisandre actually does seduce Jon here, and that in between here and the next chapter, which would be Melisandre's chapter, that they have had sex and perhaps a shadow baby. So I just want to put that out there before the next chapter.
Nice.
I forgot how outwardly seductive Melisandre was in this chapter. It's like she's not holding anything back.
No.
No, yeah, she's going straight for it.
And do you think that Jon mistaking her for Ygritte was intentional on Melisandre's part? Like, could she have used like a slight glamour to appear like Ygritte?
Yeah, I definitely think it was a glamour. I don't think she necessarily would know what Ygritte would look like, but maybe the glamour would just be, Jon will see whatever he wants to see, kind of thing. And so
something like that.
Yeah, and so he, saw Ygritte. But yeah, I definitely think that was not just a mistaken identity. I think it was a glamour. We know that Melisandre could do that too, so.
Yeah, in the Melisandre chapter, she's telling Mance Rayder, who's Rattleshirt, you have to wear the bones because that's what people expect to see when they see Rattleshirt, and glamours. That's how glamours work. They produce what you expect to see. So yeah.
Yeah, even here when Rattleshirt puts on like regular armor, he gets like larger and more physically imposing than he was previously when he was clamored up as Rattleshirt in this chapter.
And he's obviously not acting like Rattleshirt, which I completely missed out on my first reread. Did anyone else get that something was going on?
I mean, it seemed really weird, but I did not get that he was Mance Rayder here. No.
Yeah, no, I definitely thought that Mance Rayder was charred, burnt flesh by this point, so that was surprising.
As he should be, by the way. But.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know. I went into this chapter. I don't know why I got spoiled. I think I was spoiled on this, but I knew that Mance Rayder was still alive. So like, I think I just assumed something happened, but I don't remember.
So, what does everybody think about Melisandre being able to win over Ghost? How do you think that she was able to win him over?
I mean, I'm assuming she had some sort of like magic or whatever to win him over, but like, because like usually when the direwolves are like don't like people, it signifies they're not good. Like you have that with Rob and everything with his direwolf going crazy around the Westerlings and stuff. And so I don't think that he was like actually won over by Melisandre, but she used some sort of magic, I guess, to win him over, to try to convince Jon like that she's good, which I think she is good to a sense, but I just don't know. I don't know if Ghost like would think she was good in the sense of like she's an actually good person. She thinks she's doing what's right, what needs to be done, I guess.
I think they're on the same side ultimately.
But it's weird, when you think about when we think about the direwolves, most people think that they were sent by the old gods to protect the Starks, right? And when Melisandre sees visions of Bloodraven and Bran, she recoils from it because she thinks that Bloodraven is the great other. And if we believe that, Bloodraven is also an agent of the old gods as the direwolf, then you would think that Melisandre would have the same feelings towards the direwolf, especially if she was kind of like taking over his mind to
I think this kind of proves otherwise. I think
Melisandre makes mistakes.
Well, yeah, she does, obviously. Ultimately, I think that Bloodraven and Melisandre would be on the same side. It's just, why doesn't she think of Ghost the same way? I don't know. It's weird how she's able to get him to, be so docile.
Maybe just I'm reaching here, but maybe whatever she's seen in the flames, as far as Jon being needed to defeat the others, maybe she saw Ghost as part of that. She could have seen him in the flames too, and knows that Ghost has to be around in order for them to win, or get what she needs out of it. But I also I thought that maybe the Ygritte glamour had something to do with Ghost warming up to her quickly, because I know the connection between the Starks and their direwolves is so strong. So Jon kind of being taken off guard and seeing Ygritte could have kind of calmed him down enough that Ghost kind of could have got that feeling as well. So I was wondering maybe the glamour had something to do with Ghost warming up as well.
Certainly plausible. I mean, she could just have a stake in her sleeve or something, but
Yeah.
But I think personally that I don't want to get ahead too much to the next chapter, but I think that it's likely that Bloodraven and Melisandre are not on the same side myself.
Actually, I'm reading the passage right now, and it's Jon has seen Ghost's eyes blazing red the same way. And I'm wondering, maybe, I don't know if she's not warging into Ghost, but maybe she's able to do like some weird like fire version of warging, because warging is associated more with the North, I guess. And so, because like Jon can't control ghosts, and we see that with what's his face, Sixskins and Bran when they're like, or not Sixskins and Bran, Sixskins and that other person, like when they're fighting over control of the owl, I think, in the prologue. So it might be some sort of like variation on warging.
We know that Melisandre can sense wargs because she essentially kills Varamir's mind when she burns up the eagle. Yeah. So it would not be surprising that she has magic that can interfere with that or do something.
She's definitely magic in some way. I just can't necessarily make sense of all of her powers, but I don't think we're supposed to.
And I think she has multiple powers too. I think she is like both magic from Ashai and then like holy magic, like arcane magic from Ashai and holy magic from the Red God. I think she's kind of dual class that way. So
yeah,
she also has those powders, which I would just say is.
And she's got science too,
or just like not ventriloquist, but like we're like
sleight of hand.
Yeah, that. Where like, ooh, look at this, I can make it fire, ooh, but it's really just powder. Some of that.
She's got some flash paper with her. Just like
she's definitely got her little tricks. But I think she does definitely possess a greater power too. And what did you guys think about the Arya, the letter concerning Arya?
I don't understand Jon's like reasoning towards like, I don't have a sister anymore, because Benjen was like constantly coming, or not constantly coming, but like we know Benjen would come to Winterfell to see the Starks, and like you the Black brothers are like your new family, but like I don't understand why he thinks he has to give up his like old life when obviously like we've seen evidence that you don't have to give them up. You just are also adopting this new brotherhood.
But if Benjen returned, he would not seek vengeance against the Lannisters who have killed Ned. I think that's the distinction.
Yeah,
Jon's a hypocrite here.
Yeah,
Jon does kind of take things to the extreme. Like when he thinks that, he shouldn't be eating with his friends because he's the Lord Commander now. Whereas he did see his father doing the exact opposite. So he does tend to, take things to the extreme.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he's doing right now.
I think he takes Maester Aemon's advice to kill the boy. I think he takes it completely wrong in so many ways.
I think this is an example of Jon, who is 16 years old and perhaps not. I mean, he's a good ruler in a sense, but he also makes a lot of mistakes that maybe a more older person wouldn't. And again, young rulers forced into these ruling positions before they're ready is a running theme in this series.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about it in a past Reread episode, the fact that Jon is a great military commander, I think, but as far as someone who governs an entire population of people, I think that he is just terrible. He lacks what you need in a ruler.
He doesn't have charisma, which is his problem, because like it's kind of like you need people to like you, and he just doesn't understand that. He's kind of like Cersei in that way. Like he doesn't understand that he has to like appeal to the masses. He's kind of just like, no, they need to do what I say because I'm right and they're wrong, and they just need to understand that. Whereas Cersei takes it to like a different extreme, but they're kind of similar in that way.
Yeah, I mean, like Connor Pike and Sir Mallister are not his enemies, and yet he kind of doesn't heed their advice. I mean, so often there are people that aren't opposed to him, but he just keeps pushing them in the wrong direction, I think. I don't know. I feel really bad reading these Jon chapters where he kind of screws everything up.
You just want to like take him and shake him.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I just wish he had some better advice. Like if he would have kept Maester Aemon around, I think a lot of this could have been avoided.
Well, I think Melisandre would have burned Maester Aemon, so
no, I don't think Stannis would have allowed that personally, but then, yeah.
Well, isn't that why he sent Maester Aemon away, was because he thought Melisandre was going to burn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that Jon sending Maester Aemon away was a terrible decision, I think, and as far as him thinking that Melisandre would, take him and burn him, you have to imagine that the entire Watch would be against that.
Sure.
And I know that, Stannis' quote-unquote king right now. But I don't think the Watch would stand for that. And it would have been kind of a battle at the wall between Stannis' army and the Watch, and the Watch probably would have been decimated if he really wanted to burn up Aemon that badly. But I think
Stannis wouldn't do that.
Yeah, having enough people, go against the idea of burning their maester, I think Stannis would not have went with it.
Yeah, I feel like it was just a precaution by Jon. I mean, a very well-informed precaution, perhaps, because he is afraid of Melisandre and what she might do in a sense. But even just avoiding the Night's Watch and Stannis' armies going up against each other if Maester Aemon's out of the picture. But yeah, I ultimately do think it was a mistake as well.
Yeah, Jon's biggest mistake, I think, was just sending his greatest allies away from him and leaving him with a bunch of enemies at the wall.
I think he makes enemies where he doesn't need to, too. Yeah. I think he, when he takes power, he's in a decent position, all things considered. But
yeah, everything. I mean, he starts off all right, and then it just goes downhill quickly.
It's a really good, interesting concept because, I think we all agree with Jon's ultimate agenda, but we can also see that he's made some very clear mistakes and we can also understand why he was stabbed by mutineers. Like two different contradictory but also understandable ideas, agendas.
I think he's very much he thinks that he's explaining himself best enough to the people, but he's not telling them why they need to make these decisions. He's like, why do they not just understand the way that I'm thinking? He doesn't explain. And I think if he had taken the time to kind of say this is exactly what's going on, maybe there would be more the Night's Watch would have been more rational. But then again, I don't know. I feel like everyone is very hot-headed in this series.
Yeah, which I think again that reads to the fact that he's young. He doesn't have the charisma that's needed to rule, and so he doesn't really think that he needs to justify any of his actions to his men, which is, again, it's against anything that Ned has taught him, but I don't think Ned was necessarily teaching him as much as he was, teaching Robb. Jon was just there to witness everything. So.
Yeah, I think he was teaching him as well. I mean, we see him teach Bran. We see him want to teach Rickon even. So I think in his way, he didn't neglect Jon in teaching. That's my opinion, I guess. Yeah,
not that Jon was neglected, but I think there was a focus on Robb.
Sure. Yeah.
But of course, that's definitely that's the way it should be. Robb was the heir, so.
Robb screws up badly too. So.
Yeah. Robb. Yeah, he was actually. I think he made worse decisions than Jon, but Robb was also painted into a corner. He didn't have any other very many options. The only his biggest mistake after the idiot wedding.
Could he have annulled that wedding and then just married the Frey girl, or would that not have flown?
I don't think that would have flown because they consummated.
I don't think that's Robb either. I mean, once he.
No, I know. I mean, that was the whole point. It was he's got pride, or not the pride, the honor, but.
Why not just legalize polyamory?
Legalize polyamory?
Yeah.
A harem.
Right, yeah. He would be like Aegon the Conqueror, the second.
Marry everyone for political alliances.
Didn't mean to disrupt him with Jon talk or Robb talk.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. Yeah. Does anybody else have anything to say about Jon chapter?
So this is the last time we see Sir Alistair Thorne in the series. So I just wanted to ask people, what do you think of Alistair Thorne as a character and also as a villain? Because arguably in the first 3 novels, maybe he's served as Jon's primary antagonist.
For the first time we see him, we don't get any of his motivations, why he's doing what he's doing. But then as you read the story, when you've read all the books, you realize that he was a Targaryen loyalist, and he's very bitter that they lost and he was exiled in the Night's Watch, and you kind of understand where he's coming from. So you get to understand him a little more. And after Jon becomes Lord Commander, Alistair Thorne, even though Alistair Thorne hates him, he does follow every order because he understands that this is his Lord Commander now, right? And he doesn't disobey him.
I really want him to come back so that when like the truth about Jon being a Targaryen comes out, like I just think that would make for some good like storytelling. I don't know, because he was a Targaryen loyalist. I think that would just be really interesting. I don't know.
He's definitely coming back. There's no way that George is leaving this unresolved.
Yeah, great. I kind of like him. I think like the drill sergeant character is a character that's hard to love at first glance, but I think, as Nadia said, his motivations and his loyalty to the Watch, like when he's kind of when Lord Commander sends him south with the hand, it's kind of humiliating. I think the whole thing, but he serves and he does his duty, and I think he is trying to really turn like farm boys into like people that won't just get killed the first time they go north of the wall. So I find him really sympathetic character myself.
Oh yeah, I like him, especially who was the guy that got his head chopped off? I forget what his name is.
Janos Slynt.
Yeah. I start to like Alistair Thorne like a lot more once Janos Slynt gets his head cut off. I don't know. I just think it like because Janos Slynt is just such a bigger like dick that he just like outdicks Alistair Thorne and makes him look he makes him look so like more rational and like appealing, I guess.
Although it's kind of a shame given that Janos Slynt was probably one of the few characters other than Davos who we've seen have serious social mobility. Basically Davos and Bronn other than him.
All 2 out of 3 are awesome at least.
And I think there's a message there in this society how much social mobility actually happens.
We got the Kettle Blacks a little bit, I guess.
Oh, yeah, and it goes great for the Kettle Blacks.
I mean, doesn't Littlefinger, he represents some social mobility, right? Like,
his freaking grandfather or was Sellsword, right? Or no? Was it
so his house is very minor. I don't know exactly what it is, but now he's like freaking, he's got the veil.
Well, he calls himself the Lord of Sheeps and shit.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah. Well, and also with Littlefinger, how much I think that he definitely did a good job climbing the ladder, but he also just got in the Lannisters' back pocket, and they kind of just gave him everything that he wanted. Which I guess
John Arryn who really gave him his patronage.
Yeah, John Arryn started it, and then I think he's just such a weasel that he just grabbed onto any power that he could, and I think he saw, he saw an opportunity in Tywin and Cersei to latch onto them and be a leech.
I think he's been very fortunate so far, but his luck will be running out pretty soon.
I really hope so. Anything else on Jon? No? All right, then after Jon 6, we jump to Tyrion 6. This takes place 3 days later on April 15th. We skip back 5 chapters and 80 pages, and with the chapter summary, we have Nadia.
Okay, so Tyrion 6. Tyrion wakes after being unconscious for a while after the incident with the stone men. He's on the Shy Maid and he stinks of vinegar because Septa Lemore has been washing him with it to prevent grayscale. Halden Halfmeister tells him they're at Selhorus and then makes him prick each finger and toe with a dagger to make sure that he's not infected with grayscale. Septa Lemore is really glad Tyrion's awake, but young Griff is sulking because he's confined to the boat since the Dothraki have been seen riding on the banks of the river. And they need to conceal the fact that they're all from Westeros. Tyrion challenges Aegon, young Griff, to a game of Sivas, and while defeating him soundly, he convinces Griff that he cannot go to Daenerys as a beggar. Tyrion advises him to go to Westeros instead, while Cersei is still the ruler, and take as much territory as he can, starting with Storm's End. Yandri and Ysilla return to the Shy Maid and bring news that Daenerys is still stuck in Meereen, beset by foes on every side. Griff sends Halden and Tyrion to find information from Kawo, who's the customs officer in Silhoris. On the way there, they hear that Benero, who's the High Priest of R'hllor, has declared that Daenerys is Azor Ahai reborn and her triumph will bring a summer that never ends. They reach the inn where Kawo plays Siwas every day. Halden indicates to Tyrion that he needs to lose to Kawo to keep the information coming. They learn that the Yankish have been courting the Triarchs of Volantis. Those of the old blood are afraid that they will burn if Daenerys ever comes to Volantis. The Yankish already have Newgis and some of the Dothraki on their side. After this, Tyrion heads to a brothel and asks for a Westerosi girl, but she doesn't speak a word of the common tongue. Tyrion gets really drunk, and after taking her twice, he dismisses her. On his way out, he runs into a Westerosi knight with a big black bear on his surcoat and a silver-haired Lyseni girl in his lap. The knight immediately grabs a sword and takes Tyrion into custody and says that he's going to deliver him to the queen.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, Nadia, do you have any notes on this chapter?
Well, Tyrion's assessment of how Cersei is going to be ruling is seriously accurate. Like, he knows his sister so well. He predicts every move that she's going to make.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's definitely saying something to the fact that they're brother and sister, but Cersei is also very predictable to Tyrion at this point. Anyone, I think, who knows her can predict her moves. And I know in a little bit we'll get to it, so start thinking of your Septa Lemore theories, but let's focus on the chapter right now, but just keep that in the back of your mind. I really want to talk about that.
What did you think of the speech Tyrion gives to Aegon, saying, "Oh, you should go west, not east, and Daenerys will come save you, and you'll meet as equals, and it's the best idea ever." What do you think of that speech he gives, basically?
I think, again, that's a very accurate assessment of the situation. If Aegon goes to Daenerys, as he is right now, there is no way that Daenerys will take him. Like, we see what happens with Quentyn when he brings nothing. And that's what Aegon has. He doesn't really have anything at the moment, right? And Daenerys has so many suitors who are, way more qualified to marry the mother of dragons, right? So I think Tyrion's advice is pretty sound.
I'm less convinced of Daenerys' rationality there, but he does have less, certainly, than Quentyn has a kingdom or a principality or whatever to offer. I'm just not sure if she's not smitten with Aegon. She doesn't marry Aegon anyway. But
I doubt they will be marrying.
Oh, no, I mean, if Aegon would have went east originally.
When would he arrive? Would he arrive not long after she gets the prophecy telling her to go to Westeros? Because then, maybe if the timing's worked out at that exact point, she might go for it.
I don't think she would believe that he's a Targaryen, though. Like, I think she would be offended by him just claiming to be a Targaryen.
Yeah, and I mean, we have to remember also, she would know that his claim to the throne is stronger than hers. So I don't think she would take well to that either.
Would be the heir. I mean, it's not even. Yeah, I don't know. I think she would be put on the spot.
Oh, Tyrion's advice just makes me think. Like, just the first part that makes me think of Quaithe, which is like, to go west, you must go east, and he's like, don't go west, go east. So I don't know, might be something there.
I think the one part of Tyrion's speech that's obvious BS is saying, "Oh, and Daenerys will surely fly over when she hears you fighting on your behalf." I think the rest of it all sounds great, like as a rationale, but that one bit, and that's the crucial bit of getting Daenerys to actually come to you, that everything depends on. And I think for this reason that Tyrion is he's basically just sowing chaos. He just wants to see shit go down. He doesn't really care about Pagan.
Did you say it's just out of spite, or what is his reasoning for doing this, do you think?
I think he's just so very bitter, and he just hates everyone. He wants to start some fires and watch them burn.
Yeah. This is I start not liking Tyrion after Storm of Swords, because he loses like motivation. Like he doesn't have a drive except for like vengeance, but it's not even like I don't know, it's just his character just kind of is not interesting anymore because he's just not doing anything really. He's just being bitter.
Yeah, I have to agree. He lost it for me also after Storm of Swords, just because the constant going over, where do whores go, and it's just it seems very predictable at this point that there's so many chapters that he has in Dance, and a lot of them just review the same thing and have the same theme, that his chapters just got pretty boring for me.
Particularly that phrase. George's editors for Dance with Dragons needed to cross this out like 10 times.
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, all we had to hear is like, he thought of Tysha or something. It didn't have to constantly be in italicized letters. Where do whores go?
I think it displays his character more than just thinking about Tysha. I think puts him in a kind of a more sympathetic mind frame for me, but the way he thinks about it, to me, makes it very distasteful. So I think he's puts himself at the center of it instead of like thinking about her plight. So I think it's an effective. Like I said, you could certainly cut a few of them out, but I think it's effective in characterizing him at this point of his life.
I like the appearance of Grayscale in this chapter, and when Tyrion is told every day you have to prick your fingers and toes, and basically just the idea that you could have this disease, but there might not be any manifestations for years to come. That's just freaky. Interesting.
Yeah, and the part that they mentioned about the infection starting from the inside and working its way out because he swallowed the water was just another kind of like particularly horrifying thing to find out about Grayscale. Because if it starts on the inside, I mean, it'll harden your lungs and you die before you ever get a chance to see the infection on the outside.
I think that would be better, right? I would rather be dead than this like stone zombie person.
Right? Yeah, with cracked knuckles and basically a rabid mind.
Are Targaryens immune to Grayscale? Because
there's no reason to believe that.
Dany thinks that she might be immune to everything because she's pregnant, but I think that was Viserys.
Some Targaryens, it seems, might be immune, but we have definitely seen cases of Targaryens dying to plagues and other things, especially after they stop interbreeding. But yeah, I think it's some are, some aren't. That's my opinion.
Great summer sickness or whatever.
The great spring sickness, or I don't know, summer sickness.
I don't remember.
It seems with the Targaryens,
there were like multiple Targaryens that died.
Yeah, and it seems with the Targaryens, some of are considered, quote unquote dragon, where they have their. I think people that are considered a dragon would be. Hold a little bit more. Maybe they're immune to certain diseases and they can control the dragons. But like they said that, like Viserys was no dragon, compared to Daenerys. So it could be that. No, that's just me spitballing.
So do you think that Tyrion does have Grayscale, or?
No, I don't think Tyrion has Grayscale. I don't think that George would do that to his favorite character.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering because I don't think he has Grayscale either, and so I'm just wondering what the purpose is of
Well,
someone else got
there-
Well,
grayscale,
John
as we'll
Connington.
find out.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Connington.
I forgot about that. Never mind. I'm sorry. I was completely forgot about John Connington.
Yeah, I think they're laying it on thick in this chapter and in the Tyrion chapters about the grayscale, because by the time you get to the John Connington chapter, you kind of understand what the symptoms or signs would be. And so it's easier for us to catch on the fact that, well, and I mean, John Connington has like a sore or whatever.
It's a good old bait and switch. We think it's Tyrion's the red herring, but John Connington is the murderer, if it was a murder mystery.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we get the same thing at the end of the chapter with taking you to the queen. What queen?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
You
so
did that,
obvious.
George. That's clever.
No, it's so obvious, though. I'm
know.
like, you're not clever.
That was with sarcasm.
The idea of grayscale is just terrifying, and then the fact that there's other plagues going around right now too. There's like the white mare or whatever it is.
It's dysentery.
Yeah, so it just seems like wherever you go at this point in the world, there's just, plague and disease and war, that just everything is so terrible. And I think George lays it on pretty thick, but it may to just get an idea of where the world started when we started in Game of Thrones as to where it is now. Adding the
famine,
disease factor in
pestilence,
helps.
death, war.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the
Four
horsemen of the apocalypse are all upon us in Planetos.
Oh, maybe that's what the dwarfs in the vision that the Undying represented.
What was it? What was the vision again?
I thought there were 7 dwarfs.
4 dwarfs making love / raping a beautiful woman.
Oh.
Okay, yeah, that could be the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse tearing apart the world.
I thought it was 7 were like eating a woman or something.
I think it was 4. I think we're thinking
It
of the
definitely
same
was 4 in that vision, because I just remember another interpretation is it could be the kings and the girl as Westeros. That one was always the vaguest of the prophecies.
Oh, I'm on the Westeros.org. Yeah, beautiful naked woman being ravished by 4 little men who resemble the dwarf servitor.
But that's meant to be Westeros, right?
That's
that's up for interpretation, I would say.
I think that's the most accepted one, though, is that it's like Westeros.
Yeah. I think about Azor Ahai, or not Azor Ahai, but the prince that was promised. Aemon Targaryen has, before he dies, he mentions that there's been kind of like a misinterpretation of how the prince is going to be, a prince. Mm-hmm. He indicates that the Valyrian word doesn't have like male or female connotations attached to it. Like it could be either. So he thinks when he learns of Daenerys, he thinks of how she might be the prince that was promised. Because she has dragons again.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And if the prince that was promised and Azor Ahai are the same person, then Daenerys could be Azor Ahai.
And I definitely like that idea, and I like the fact that that's a theme in the books that the dragons don't necessarily have a sex, and so there is no, in High Valyrian or whatever it is, there is no he or she.
Yeah.
Or that word specifically means dragon, and for that reason it could be either male or female.
Oh, okay.
But no, aren't the dragons are sexless, though, I thought.
Well, okay, so here's what Symptom Ballot says. But now one, but now the other, as changeable as flame. So I don't know. My biological interpretation is that
how does that work?
No, they're like
animals.
They're like clownfish. They're like clownfish.
No. You get this in nature, where they can be one gender, and then either randomly or specific stimuli cause them to change gender again. Cane toads will do this. If you have a bunch of male cane toads and you put them in a room, some will become female so they can start breeding.
Doesn't matter because John is Azor Ahai anyway, so it doesn't.
when you throw in the prophecy of the dragon and having 3 heads, I feel like multiple people will fit this bill for Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised. There are many people that have this sort of messianic role in the story.
Well, it's obviously Theon. Like, he's reborn as Greek, he's Azor Ahai.
well, clearly, he's the 3rd head, obviously.
Right, and I guess he's sexless at this point, so it makes sense. He has no gender.
Oh, I've never found castration so funny.
Oh my god.
You gotta make light out of a dark situation.
It's Victorian, though, right? It's gotta be.
Everyone has their different opinions on who the prince is, who is promised, and who is Azor Ahai reborn. I think a lot of people obviously think that it's Jon and Dany, but I don't know. I like to read into the theories that are a little more out there, a little bit more tinfoil.
Yeah, I mean, there are very convincing arguments for Victarion and Davos Seaworth, and
interesting.
I don't know, there are a lot of them.
It's like, I think it's the 3rd head is going to be Tyrion. I don't want it to be Tyrion, but I feel like we're getting to that point where it is Tyrion.
I agree completely. I don't want it to be, but I think it is.
Said that the 3rd head might not necessarily be a Targaryen.
Sure, George.
I hate the idea that Tyrion is a Targaryen. I hate it with passion.
I also think Tyrion is a Targaryen. I don't want him to be, but I think he is a Targaryen. It just won't ever be said.
It feels too wrong, and it makes several characters much less interesting, in my opinion, which is always right because it's my opinion. So I just... My one fear, actually, is that it was a leftover idea from his original thing that he submitted for what the story was going to be. That was really bad.
It was a love triangle with Arya, Jon, and what's his name? Someone else.
And Tyrion.
Yeah.
And it's like an incest triangle, and it's like, oh, God, what were you thinking, George?
He was thinking, I've got to get some pretty crazy shit on paper so I can get a book deal.
I think there's too much fresh evidence in the last book that it's not just a vestigial thing from an earlier, unfortunately. I don't want him to be a Targaryen either, but it's hard to come to any conclusion.
I don't know anyone who wants Tyrion to be a Targaryen. And he kinds of ruined the whole thing of Tyrion and Tywin's relationship.
Yeah, I don't want to say it ruins it, but it certainly feels like that's where it feels like that. But until we actually get the whole story, I don't want to say it ruins it. But
I think George saying that the 3rd head of the dragon might not be a Targaryen. How does that make sense? Like, how do you get a dragon who's not a Targaryen?
Yeah, we've had non-Targaryen dragon riders before.
But they weren't they always?
Like, they were all proven to have.
There's that good old horn, remember, that Euron has. So there seem to be other ways of taming dragons. But again, we'll have to wait and see.
And also other forms of Targaryen, like Blackfires.
Well, Aegon's a Blackfire, right? That's 100%.
Yeah, I suppose it could be a Baratheon or an Arryn or someone, I don't know, someone with remote Targaryen ancestry. But
yeah, or it could just be someone who has a Valyrian background, because most of the Valyrians were dragon riders, so...
but we don't have any main characters who are Valyrian other than the Targaryens, right?
Right, yeah.
There's the Battle of Fire coming on, with the Volcanian's head in there. They're Valyrian, so that could be an interesting wild card for Daenerys.
Yeah, and I just wish we would have at least gotten one battle in this book, a battle of ice or a battle of fire, but we won't get into how bitter we are about that.
It'll just make the next one twice as fun. 2 battles.
First, we just need to get that book.
Agreed. I want to jump into some of Bina's notes here.
Can I?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Can I just Just some very interesting stuff that we hear about slavery. Stuff that Cabo says about slavery, like when he says that even the poorest people who are free, even when they don't have anything to eat, at least they have this sense of superiority that they're better off than the slaves. And it's just kind of that's just stuff that you don't think about when you think of slavery. As horrible as the whole situation is, it's just it's an interesting insight.
Yeah, no, I kind of equated that with the idea, and this is obviously not the same, but like the idea of maybe like raising the minimum wage. There's certain people out there who are just above the minimum wage who would not want that because that's going to put everyone who is technically below them on their same level. So I definitely think it's something that it has real world parallels. That you always want to be above someone. It's just human nature to think that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
humans are very status oriented, so they compare themselves relative to others. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if everybody's equal in a given area, that they would try and strive to form a hierarchy.
I would say if you look at the Night's Watch, officially they're all equal because they're all black brothers, but you see hierarchies form very quickly there. I think this is, as you say, a running theme in the books.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, in the Night's Watch, there's the highborn, there's the knights, and then there's people who are trained, and then the untrained, like tanners and farmers. And any other notes before we jump into Bina's? No, and I'll.
Sorry. Yeah. One thing quickly. Mm-hmm. I think it's mentioned in this chapter that Benero has prophesied that Volantis will burn if they oppose Daenerys. I think this is a prophecy that's going to come true, and this represents Daenerys' future path. She's going to go from Meereen to Volantis, then possibly Pentos. But yeah. There's a reason all of this Volantis backstory has been slowly dropped. Shit's going to go down in Volantis.
I definitely agree with that. Something's going to happen. Yeah, when? I'm still optimistic.
If. But let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. So just jumping into Bina's notes, and I want to save the Septa Lemore stuff to the end. But she noted here she loves this vintage Tyrion with acute political and emotional insight, and then the scene with the whore happens, and that's the moment for her when the scales fell from her eyes. So how do we feel about? I guess we touched on that before, but who was kind of happy that Tyrion was actually political and emotional?
Tyrion is very, like, when he analyzes Cersei and when he analyzes, what Aegon should be doing, I think that's spot on. But even when he is when he is in the brothel, when he looks at the whore and he's thinking, she doesn't even care. It's such a horrible description when he thinks, she's dead. Even her eyes are dead. She doesn't care. And he's thinking all of that, and he still does,
So this is rape, right? Does anyone think this is not rape? And
she doesn't have a choice. Like she's
not even a whore. To call her a whore, she's a sex slave. I mean, it's horrible what he does to her.
She doesn't have a choice, and he notices the scars.
Yeah,
and he's still it's
right.
It's terrible.
He even mentions the fact that she looks Westerosi, but she doesn't speak the tongue. So obviously she was, kidnapped or taken way early on in her life, and this has been her entire life as being basically a sex slave. And
he's very flippant.
Yeah, and it's just weird that he has all these thoughts, but then he still goes forward with the
twice.
Actions. And I think, twice. And that just goes to show how off the deep end Tyrion is, I feel.
very depraved, very, yeah.
Don't we get some of this same behavior when he's staying with, oh my god, why can I not remember his name? Yeah. Like,
He threatens the whore, but like it's in a, I mean, the whore is frightened for her life, but he's doing it in a joking manner. But yes, I would say he has these temptations when he's going to the slaves. And Illyrio even mentions, none of them will refuse you. So yeah.
Doesn't he send a maid to her expressly for the purpose of seducing him, or I don't know, seducing? But
I don't know. So I wasn't very surprised by the behavior that he portrayed in this chapter, just because of we had the previous instances where he might not have like acted on it, but he definitely was like at this point, I guess, mentally.
Yeah, and I mean, even in the beginning of the chapter, he has that line about Septa Lemore, which, if she is a Septa and if she is this holy person, it's not like someone to kind of speak to her that way.
So, yeah, even if she's not, it doesn't really...
Right. And I also wanted to talk about, Thomas, you put something on the Google Doc about Tyrion being a drowned man. So I wanted to see if you wanted to talk about that.
So, yeah, I think it's possible that Tyrion actually died in the last chapter, and now he's back like a Hatchface or someone who is... I think there's a lot of characters in the story, like a surprisingly lot of characters that actually have drowned and have come back to life. And I'm not 100% sure what's going on, other than I think they're agents of the gods now. But I think Tyrion possibly actually died in between his two chapters here.
Anyone who has had CPR performed on them is a drowned man, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it could be...
And Septa Lemore, and it says that Septa Lemore squeezed the water out of his lungs. So, And
the place Tyrion drowned in, that's where, like, magical stuff was strong, obviously. So if it would happen at any place, it would happen there.
So are your thoughts now that Tyrion may be starting, like, later down the line, he may start to have visions or kind of be able to prophesize things? Or...
I think it's possible that the gods require his existence to continue, so that he's like Samwell has, I think, drowned and died. I think Davos has probably drowned and died. Go ahead.
You think it just reads to the fact that they have a greater purpose down the line?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Any other notes before we get to Septa Lemore? Okay, so I know there's been a chapter, or I think a podcast on this in the past, or at least they touched on it in the past. But let's bring up some Septa Lemore theories. Anyone want to go first?
The only one I know is...
she's Cerella Sand's mother. Sorry. Tyene Sand.
Yeah, the only one I know is she's a Sharadane. But...
Yeah, I hope that's not true.
No, that's not... I feel like I've argued this so many times.
I'm not saying I believe it. That's the only one I know.
I think that's the most prominent one.
That entire theory is based on the fact that she has stretch marks on her belly, which indicates that she's had a child, right? Or at least that she's been pregnant.
Well, I'd say that's one of them.
Late-term pregnancy. But yeah, anyway. She's Tyrion... Ashara Dane's most defining characteristic was her purple eyes, right? And if Septa Lemore had purple eyes, that would be something very distinctive. So it would have been something that Tyrion noticed the first time that he saw her, right? And he doesn't describe her as having purple eyes, right? It's something that's pretty rare, especially in someone who's Westerosi. That makes me think that she's probably not Ashara Dane, right?
I agree with you 100%.
That's the most distinct art, yeah. What's the other one? She's one of the Sand Snake's moms, right?
Yeah. Tyene Sand, who's
that's not true, because they mentioned in one of Ariane's chapters that Tyene's mother lives in the Reach. across the Manda River, and that Arianne went and saw her once. There's an appendix somewhere that talks about Tyenne's mother, and she lives in Westeros, I think.
Yeah, I also, the relevance, like, I just also can't imagine, like, the relevance of having Septa Lemore be Tyenne's mother. Like, it just, like, doesn't, it seems completely irrelevant to the plot.
There's none. It's just that Tyne is the daughter of a Septa, and Septa Lemore is a Septa, and that's the entire reasoning behind this theory.
Well, I think in this series, people always want to make characters someone else, which definitely isn't always the case. Like, I don't know if Daario Naharis is actually, a different identity, but I think with this, George lays it on pretty thick that Septa is someone.
Septa Lemore is Benjen?
Yeah, Septa Lemore is Benjen. It's just a glamour. But, he lays it on pretty thick because there's the portion where she's kind of changing or trying to disguise herself, and she mentions to, quote-unquote, Aegon that he's not the only one that needs to hide. I think it definitely, she is someone, but we just don't know who she is at this point.
I agree. There's a lot of breadcrumbs. So.
But the thing is, the only thing that we know about her is that she's had a child, and even when she's pretending to be a Septa, we don't even know if she is really a Septa.
I don't think she's a Septa.
She might just be pretending to be, because when Tyrion makes that very body remark about her, she doesn't even she's kind of amused by it, like she's not really bothered. So I would think that a Septa would have far more negative reaction than Septa Lemore should.
I agree.
So,
I don't think that she's a Septa either. I think that she's probably, in my opinion, she has to be someone highborn who was, raised with the Seven in order to have the knowledge that she does about the religion. But I don't think that she was traditionally trained as a Septa or, anointed or anything like that.
Well, we know she's a Targaryen loyalist of some sort, right? At least. Or to be with this group.
Yeah, she has to be in order to be with the group.
So,
where was Lyness Hightower?
Oh yeah, I'm reading the subreddit.
Where is Lyness Hightower supposed to? Where is the last?
She's in Lys at the moment.
She's in Lys, right? Okay.
No, there's a theory she's Melora Hightower.
The mad sister, the mad maid, or isn't she supposed to be still in the Hightower?
I don't know. I'm reading on the Reddit right now. Just trying to see what other people come up with. I mean,
Lyness is the only other highborn Westerosi woman in Essos that I can think of right now. So, I don't know. There might be a lot of others. Who knows?
Oh, there's also the theory she's Aegon's mother. I forgot about that one. Or young Griff's mother.
Like her Israel mother.
It's Illyrio's wife, right? Though, right? Don't you think? I think
that's again another theory, which I find very plausible. But yeah.
Any other Septa Lemore theories?
I don't have any good ones, honestly. Other than I think she is someone. I think there's too many breadcrumbs for her not to be someone.
Right, that's definitely what I wanted to touch on, is I don't know who she is, but she has to be someone. This is one of the characters in the book that I think does have a dual identity. Some of the other ones are, I think fans get a little crazy with their theories, but this one I think is legit.
Mm-hmm.
So I got something that's it's kind of crazy. You'll see. So one of over at Not a Podcast by Brendan Beefish and Paul Quentin, one of the things that they've put forward is that in the first 3 books, most of the Faith of the Seven characters are kind of flat and uninteresting, and that this was kind of a shortcoming of sorts, and that George realized this at the time of A Feast for Crows, and afterwards he tried to write more interesting Faith of the Seven characters. So you now have people like the High Sparrow that we just met, and Septa Lemore, and so maybe she just represents George trying to add a bit more flair to some of these minor characters. Certainly, there's no who is Septa Mordane theories going on from Game of Thrones.
Septa Mordane is a head on a spike.
But I just thought that was interesting, looking at his writing style.
Yeah, I don't think it's untrue, but I don't think that means that Septa Lemore is necessarily just a background color character.
Right. I think it's a bit of both. Like you're saying is, I think she's definitely somebody, but also to make the religion more interesting, make her a septa rather than just maybe a servant,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, also the making her a septa though, because she has the pregnancy stretch marks, like that also just adds to the contradiction, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the only thing about that is I've got stretch marks and I've never been pregnant, so
That's fair. I don't know. I feel like
she could have just been fat. She could have gained a ton of weight real quickly and then dropped it.
That's the secret that's about to be revealed. She was just fat.
Yeah, she has a binge.
That's the great twist.
Yeah, where she just binges like crazy, gains a bunch of weight, and then loses it all real fast.
I'm down. You've convinced me.
But then wouldn't she have stretch marks everywhere and not just on her belly?
True that. Have we seen her arms and her thighs?
I think Tyrion's seen all of her.
Specifically notices, he sees her naked, right? And he only notices the stretch marks on her belly. So, which is why he draws the conclusion.
All right. Any more Septa Lemore theories or notes on the Tyrion chapter that you want to talk about? Or on either one of these 3 chapters that you want to jump back to?
Ooh, I think, again, Tyrion's speech that he gives to Aegon, before he gives it, he essentially starts insulting Aegon quite a bit, saying, you'll be a beggar. And this puts a chip on Aegon's shoulder, I believe, and it gives him like an inferiority complex when he thinks about himself compared to Daenerys. And I think this is going to be very influential in a decision that he will be making in the Winds of Winter regarding who he marries.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I didn't put too much thought into that, but you're correct. I knew Tyrion just seemed to want to be stirring the pot, but I never thought about the repercussions that it may have down the line besides him just going west rather than east.
I would actually argue that this is the most important thing Tyrion does in A Dance with Dragons, the speech he gives to Aegon. It's the most, the motions it sets is Well, it could just be he does jack shit in the rest of the book. But that's one opinion.
No, I agree, because in the rest of the book, he doesn't really have any authority over what happens to him. He just kind of gets pushed and pulled around different areas.
More of an observer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's another point to the fact that I think that he just has too many chapters in this book that we could have condensed them a little bit and gotten a better Tyrion storyline. But again, we won't get too much into criticizing these 2 books.
George's editors.
Yeah, his lack of editors. More like.
Yeah.
Doesn't he just have one?
I think so, yeah. I'm happy with the book. I don't.
I'd be happy with the book if the Winds of Winter was already out.
Exactly, yeah.
Right.
No,
I think a lot of
is
it
my
is just
favorite.
impatience.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the criticism that we have of this book, so many loose ends not being tied up. If we got a better ending to this book, or if Winds of Winter came out right away, I don't think that the criticisms would be as bad as they are right now. But it seems like a lot of people enjoy these books, but there's definitely a sect of the fandom that cannot stand Dance.
Oh, Dance is my favorite book, but
Yeah, I've always found it funny that people just loathe Dance. It's clear George still has his magic touch in the, the Theon chapters. Again, they're really good in Dance. there is good stuff in Dance with Dragons.
No, yeah, I agree. I think Dance is a really good book. I just think that some of the chapters could have been combined and shortened.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I just find it really funny when...
All it needed was better editing.
Right. It's not necessarily his
and maybe
writing,
a
it's the
battle at
editing.
the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
And have at least one of the battles. I mean, you have this entire. See, the thing is, the first three, if you look at the first three books, they're very self contained, even though the story continues and it flows really well into the next book, but they are kind of well contained, right? The first book, you have it all building up to Ned's execution, and then the next one has the Battle of the Blackwater at the end and the fallout and some of the fallout from that. And then the third just book just has so much. But when you come to Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons, it's the complete opposite. Especially Dance, it just keeps building and building and building up to this climax that you never get. You get neither of the battles, right? So it's just, I think that's why people are so disappointed with it.
Right. I wonder if George thought that, it would be enough of a climax to have Jon's assassination towards the end of the book, because that did, shock me when I first read it, but we just didn't get action, we didn't get a battle. We didn't get to read anything like that. So I think that's what this book is certainly lacking. It's not that it didn't have, awe moments, because it did, but it just lacked a little bit of action.
I think everything going on north is very entertaining and interesting. And then I honestly just don't have an interest in Essos that much. Like, it's like, I think George is too into world building for this. Like, I think he just put more effort on building the world than kind of figuring out, like, how to make it entertaining, I guess, or, like, move the plot along.
Yeah. And again, I think if we would have gotten the Battle of Fire, we would have a different perspective. Volantis, if something happened with Volantis, I feel like we learned so much about Volantis in this book, and then nothing really comes of it. So if we got a little bit of payoff, it would have been better. But I'm still obviously rereading the series how many times, so it still has me. I'm hooked. Any other notes before we move on? No? Okay. So let's just close out the episode here. For those of you following along at home, the next episode of the Reread will be hosted by Marie, and it will cover chapters Jaime 4 from Feast, Dany 5, and Davos 4 from Dance. And if you'd like to find us, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, iTunes, WordPress by searching for Vassals of Kingsgrave. And if you'd like to get involved, go ahead and search for a podcast of Ice and Fire and join the forums. And really quickly, does anybody have any forthcoming episodes that you want to pimp out?
We might be doing a Deadwood Season 1 at some point in the next month, and maybe a JFK Part 2 at some point in the next month or two.
Oh, I'd really be interested in listening to that JFK one. The first one was really good. I'm not a history buff, but I wouldn't be able to put anything into the episode, but it was really good listening to, so I'm excited about that one. And I know, Nadia, you've got something coming up.
I've got like a couple of episodes I'm still editing. I've got the next Harry Potter reread and season 2 of Glow. I'm still editing that. So those should be coming out soon. And there's episode 500, which you will see in a couple of weeks, hopefully.
Is there time to get, if someone wanted to add anything to 500, or is it all set?
I don't know. I think we already have around 6 hours of material. So I think we're good.
Oh yeah, just check.
I think we're already having to split it into 2 episodes. So
yeah, that's definitely an episode that I've been looking forward to since the moment Bina posted. I think it was Bina posted that on the forums.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to that one. All right. Anything else before we go? All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me, and I guess we'll talk later.
Thank you, James.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
so
James.
much.
All right, bye, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
You as well.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that.
Someone has a blender going.
Or a race car or
Sounds
something.
like
I don't know.
And I think the only person that's not here is Zander, but he should be joining when he has time. He's probably hungover from yesterday. Zander and I were celebrating his birthday yesterday, so that was fun.
Were you together? Is that what the pictures were?
Yeah, we both
Oh,
live in
that's cool.
Chicago. Yeah, so he invited me out to his birthday, and I planned on staying for like an hour, and it turned into like 4 hours. I didn't get home till really late, so I know he's probably feeling not so great this morning.
Someone has a blender going.
Or a race car or
Sounds
something.
like
I don't know.
Thomas has one, Michael has one, and I have one.
I have one that may be working.
Yeah, that's the way I feel as well. Like I said, whenever I update Skype, I can never tell if anything else is going to work.
Someone has a blender going.
Or a race car or
Sounds like
something. I don't know.
I've already been on like a 5.5-hour podcast today.
Oh,
So
What were you recording today?
episode 500.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Oh shit, I didn't realize it was getting recorded today.
Yeah, it was like over 5 hours. Someone has a blender going.
Or a race car or
Sounds like
something. I don't know.
I got spoiled on so many things so fast, so I don't really care about spoilers that much. So I would just like read shit on Reddit and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, see, I'm the opposite. The reason I had to read the books and I chewed them up in like a matter of months was because I didn't want to be spoiled on anything anymore. I got pretty much the Red Wedding happened on TV, and I was just so gobsmacked that I was like, I can't let that happen to me again.
The Red Wedding. I was very unprepared. I'd seen the South Park episode about it, and I still like was so unprepared for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone has a blender going.
Or a race car or
Sounds
something.
like
I don't know.
I can't be as bitter as you guys. My wait has been like less than a year, so.
Oh, you sweet summer child.
Yeah.
You were smart. The rest of us were idiots.
Well, I wasn't even born when the first book came out, so like honestly,
And now I'm gonna go get my walker and put on my
I
dependence.
don't think I was born either.
Who wasn't born?
I don't think I was either. It was 1996?
yeah, 1996.
Yeah, so I wasn't either.
So I'm older than you now than when the book came out. I guess.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Someone has a blender going.
Or a race car or
Sounds like
something. I don't know.
Where do you have them, James? Where are they on your body?
Yeah, right? They're pregnancy stretch marks. They're mainly on my tummy. It's the only place I gain weight.